IELTS Cast, episode 25.
You're listening to IELTS Cast, the podcast that puts you in touch with successful IELTS candidates from around the world. Listen and learn as they explain how they achieved Band 7, 8 and even 9. Now, here's your host, Ryan.
Hello and welcome to IELTS Cast. Today I'm speaking with Noor, an IELTS candidate originally from India that is currently living and working in Singapore. Noor has scored an overall band of 8 with an individual score of 8.5 in listening, 9 in reading, 7 in writing, and 7 in speaking. So thank you very much, Noor, for joining me, and welcome to IELTS Cast.
Thanks, Ryan. It's my pleasure being here.
So just before we started the recording, Noor, you were talking a little bit about your relationship with the exam. Do you want to tell us a bit about why you took the exam and perhaps a little bit about your personal connection to it?
Yeah, sure. The reason I took IELTS is to immigrate to Australia. As we know that to immigrate to Australia, IELTS is a mandate. So that's the reason I started preparing for IELTS.
When did you decide that this was something that you were going to pursue?
Okay. And honestly speaking, it has been, I think, 3-4 months before. But being a software programmer in Singapore, it's a grueling environment and I was not getting sufficient time to prepare. So I was not preparing actively. So whenever I get time on this weekends, I was preparing it. So I had taken a couple of months, 3 to 4 months for preparing this.
Mm-hmm. And how many times have you taken the exam, or was this the first time?
No, this is my first time.
So did you hit the goal that you were hoping to achieve?
No, actually not.
Okay.
See, I know I was expecting, I did not expect, but I was aiming for band 8 in all the sections. I know I will not be able to do it on the same single attempt, but I was trying my level best because in my situation, right, I need to score 8 in all the bands so that I will be able to get a points of 70. Fortunately, now I have got a point of 60, which will make sure that I will be eligible to apply for skill selector, that expression of interest. But the problem with getting 60 is it is not very sure whether you will be getting it or not. It will be taking a lot of time.
I see.
So I did not. I don't want to give my future into the fate. I thought, okay, let's give out all the whatever we have and then try our level best. But fine. Anyway, I have got it. Now I'm eligible and I have applied for it.
I see. Okay. Now let's talk about this experience that you've had. So you just mentioned that you knew that you were going to take the exam about 2 or 3 months before you actually took it. And
Exactly.
Why don't you walk us through a bit of the the steps that you took to prepare for the examination, and perhaps maybe you could talk about some of the challenges that you faced, some of the breakthroughs that you had.
Yeah, sure. I need to start from the scratch, but as I got to know that I need to prepare for IELTS, right? Initially, I took IELTS for granted. I thought it's going to be a simple English exam, which English obviously we are reading from since our childhood. I thought it's going to be a simple cakewalk for us. But as soon as I started preparing, then I understood it's not only your English skills. You need to master your exam skills as well. What I did, I got to know, I was browsing through the internet. I got to know your site, IELTS, IELTS.com, IELTS Network, and Simon's site as well, IELTSSimon.com. So through that, I got to know, okay, you need to practice a lot for your listening, reading, writing, as well as speaking. From all the people, as I was telling you that, what I did, right, I have an iPad with me. Once I decided that I have to prepare for IELTS, I went there and then downloaded all these podcasts, whatever podcast is available for IELTS. And one of the podcasts was yours, IELTS podcast. And as soon as I did this, I started preparing. I just started testing out my skills by downloading these IELTS Cambridge PDFs. And I stretched out my listening skills. The results were so miserable. I got around some 28 to 30 out of 40. I was quite disappointed. Then I started thinking, okay, then we need to sharpen our skills. Then that's the reason I downloaded all the podcasts and then I started listening. And apart from that, what I did, right, I started listening to this BBC World Service podcast every day. It used to come twice a day, like morning and the night. I used to listen both these things whenever I travel in my MRT in Singapore.
Great.
Okay, and for a week or two, I was doing this. But remaining period, I will not be able to practice it because of my hectic work schedule. And after 2 weeks, what I did, I started transcripting whatever I used to hear. And after then, I started practicing these Cambridge results, Cambridge question papers of listening. So with that scores gradually improved. So this is what the first technique I followed. Like I started practicing hearing a lot of native speakers. One of the most important one was the BBC World Service and the US. And then one other thing was the Travel Australia. I made sure that all these three, right, it will be a mix of how it's going to be in a listening test. BBC World Service, mostly it will be a monologue. Your news reader will be just reading out the news.
Okay.
Whereas in your IELTS cast, you were interviewing your people. So it's going to be a conversation between the two people.
Right, okay.
When I go to a Travel Australia podcast, it used to be sometimes a monologue, or in some other cases, it will be a talk between 3-4 people. They will be talking about like how was the travel experience, what are all the exquisite places they have visited.
Okay.
So I made sure I cover all these points and all these sections. And then I started practicing all these Cambridge listening question papers.
Now, just let me cut in there for a second. Now, so you were talking about the podcast that you listened to, and I'm curious, how were you listening to them? Were you actively listening? Were you taking notes, or was it more of a passive listening thing where you were perhaps on the bus when you're commuting to work? Or?
No, as I said, the initial 2 weeks, because I thought, okay, we need to start in a slow way. Like initial 2 weeks, I did not transcript it. I was just listening on the go. Whenever I was traveling in MRT, I just used to put up my earphones and then listen to whatever they say.
Okay.
I used to concentrate very hard, like, and then see, okay, because the BBC World Service, it was quite exciting. They will let you know about what is happening around the world. So it was quite interesting as well. It was not a kind of like, okay, you are reading something for the exams. You are getting to know what is happening around the world. At the same time, you are practicing.
Yeah,
so,
and the other advantage to that is, I guess, it exposes you to a variety of different topics, a variety of different English lexical resources. So it really is broad training.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because with that, right, I used to get a lot of new words. And as I travel, right, I just make a note of this unknown words or new unprecedented words to me, because there were quite a few words for me. As soon as I reach office, I used to open my dictionary and then dictionary website and then see what are all the new words in there, and used to make a note in my iPad. So that's how I was going for 2-3 weeks.
Okay, great. So let me just amplify that. So you were going to a dictionary website. Was that dictionary.com?
Yeah, dictionaryreference.com.
Okay, right. And then, sorry, dictionary of...
No, it's a normal dictionary.reference.com.
Oh, okay. And they have their word of the day, and then you were making note of this, right?
No, not day of the word. Like the words which I had listened in this BBC World Service news, right?
I see. Okay, so you were reinforcing what you had listened to earlier.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly.
Terrific. Okay.
After 3 weeks, I started transcripting that. I did not mind whatever I'm writing it. I just started whatever I used to hear. I'll just write down in the papers. Okay, and when I'm coming back from my work, I just read the transcripts, what I have heard. So that's how it was going for some weeks. After then, I started practicing these listening exams. And during my listening exams, what I found, right, it was because I listened to a couple of podcasts, and then the people there, they were telling that, okay, whenever there were some instructions going on, it's better to go to the other sections and read out the questions so that it will be easy for you when you come back to the listening sections. So exactly I was doing that. And what I have understood from my practice, right, the section 3 is going to be the toughest one out of this listening section, whereas section 4 is a general part. Section 3 is not a general. Section 4 is a general part. So that's what I did in my listening, actually IELTS listening exam also. When the instructor was just giving out the instructions, I directly went to section 3 and then read out all the questions. And one more point, what I did, right, whenever I'm reading the questions and then answers, I used to rephrase the answers so that I can remember it for a time, so that it will be there in my memory for some more time.
I see. Sorry, so let me just get this clear. You were rephrasing. How would that help you? I mean, wouldn't you just be noting down the answers as you heard them?
No, yeah, I would note down the answers, but what I was saying is, whenever I read the questions, I was just not reading the questions. I was trying to memorize, or you say, like, remember the similarities between the questions. Because the section 3 was mostly of choice. Out of 4 choices, you need to pick up one.
Sorry, so you were saying that you're rewording the questions. For some reason, I thought you said you were rewording the answers. Okay, so that makes sense. So you're rewording the questions. You're getting a deeper understanding of what it's asking for, and then you were listening for that particular information. So, and then I just let's talk for a second about your strategy where you go ahead in the exam and you look to part 3, which is the same strategy that the earlier interviewee I had on the show, Varen, shared. So do you want to talk a little bit about that? So you were using all of the time to focus, the extra time to focus on the harder parts of the examination. Even if you were in part 1, you were looking at part 3.
No, exactly. Whatever you said, like I know the section 3 is going to be the toughest one.
Right.
So I spent whenever they were giving instructions by saying, okay, section 1 is this, and you will be having some times to transfer your answers to the answer sheet. I did not listen to those because I have listened to that couple of times during my practice exams. I know what to do that. So I use that particular time to analyze the questions of section 3. Then I came back to when they started reading out example by saying, okay, they will give some examples for section 1. That time I came back to section 1 and started reading what are all the questions of section 1.
Okay.
And the beautiful part about this listening and reading, right? Most of the times you will be able to guess the answers.
Yeah.
But yeah, for example, what happens like one of the best example came in my IELTS listening was okay. It was a common topic by HR manager giving instructions to the new joinees. So like what are all the, being in a software company, what are all the basic instructions they give. So with that phrasings, right, you were able to guess, okay, what could be the answer? Maybe that answer was not exactly correct, but it will be similar. For example, what has happened, I can give one example. The employee was telling about what he had, it was a dash from his previous work experience. I thought, okay, what he had benefited or learned. These are the two options. When I went back, right, it was learned. So it was easy for me to hear that and then produce the answers.
I see. And you'd probably agree that often, even if you can't pinpoint, in particular what the exact answer is, you can often predict what type of word it will be, whether it's going to be a proper noun or a regular noun or maybe some sort of qualifying word or a number or value. I mean, you can often pick this out from the way that the question is worded.
Yeah, exactly. But this does not come in a day or two. I have taken some time to practice this.
Sure, yeah. No, that's actually a good point to highlight too, that it's not something that you can just plan to walk into the exam and use.
Because I used to think that whenever I used to hear your podcast, right, I think, okay, maybe this will not suit us and somebody I remember they were telling us, be confident and then listen to whatever you are interested in. Those are the points which instigated me to listen to, okay, because basically I'm interested in this general knowledge. That's the reason I downloaded this BBC by thinking, okay, we will be listening to native speakers. At the same time, you will get to know the lot of new words and what is happening around the world. So these are the reasons.
Okay, great. Well, that's really good advice. Now, I want to actually go back a few minutes. You had mentioned that you were using the IELTS Cambridge former examinations, and you said that you downloaded them. And I'm just wondering, did you download e-versions of the books from the Cambridge site or okay.
It's e-books, all the e-books, PDFs.
Okay, terrific. Okay, so students might want to think about that resource. I think a lot of people, they think they have to get those physical purple books, but they are available from the Cambridge site as electronic books if students are interested in that. Okay, great.
Yeah. So in addition to that, but my advice, right, as soon as you download, what I did is because initially I was just looking at the questions in my laptop and then doing it, but it was not working out.
Yep.
Because in the exams, that's not how you are going to write the exams. So then what I did, I spent from my pocket, I took all the printouts, whatever I downloaded, right? I took the printouts and then literally I wanted the environment to be similar to what it will be having in the IELTS exam.
Right. Very smart. Yeah. So you're trying to mimic the exact situation that you would be in when you get into the examination. That's good advice, because I think sometimes too when you do it on the computer, you're sort of you're training yourself in a different way, and that's
it's pretty difficult when you are writing the exam through your laptop, because you need to scroll down to the next page, the before page. It's not going to work out that time. That way.
Okay, now let's continue and talk about the other sections of the examination. So what sort of insightful advice can you share about these sections?
Reading? Which one you are asking?
We can start with reading. Just tell us about how you prepared and maybe a bit about your experience in the exam room.
Exam room, it was quite, I will not say it was a tense period or something. I started loving that time, that 2-3 hours, right? I started enjoying, because after joining this software field, I did not attend any interviews. I did not take part in tests for the last 3-4 years. So it was kind of okay, going back to your college life and then having the same test experience.
Right. Yeah, I can imagine.
So I really enjoyed that moment because that 3 hours, 2.5 hours of time, it just went like that.
Okay.
Before you think of that, they said it's time up.
Okay. Well, great. Well, at least then you weren't feeling, nerve-wracked or anxious at all when you were in the exam.
No. Before entering the examination hall, I was quite nervous.
Yes.
Butterflies were still flying in in my stomach. But once I entered it, that's all gone. It was only concentration about the exams.
So now you scored a perfect band 9, and
Yeah.
maybe you can just walk us through what you think it was that you did in your preparation that led you to be able to score this mark.
Okay, again, the preparation for reading also I carried out in phases.
Okay.
Initially, I did not, I just took all these IELTS Cambridge question papers. I started practicing this academic. I know I'm not going to write the academic, but I got to read that academics will be tougher. So I thought, okay, let me prepare the tougher ones so that the easy ones, the general will be an easy task for me.
Okay.
And I did not follow any techniques in the initial phase. Okay, and I was just going through the question papers. I was reading the questions first, and I was going back to the sections and then doing it. And the results were, as I said, the results were not quite good. It was around some 28 out of 40 in academic. Then I started realizing we need to do some extra skills for that. That's how what I did is, as I was telling in the listening section, the same skills, the same tactics I used for reading as well. I used to read the questions. For example, when the section 1 comes, I used to read the questions and rephrase the questions, and I'll just prepare myself. Okay, I am very sure that 90% of the time the same words will not be there in the paragraph before. It will be synonyms, or you will be have a some other words which will be having the same meaning. So I was just preparing myself and rephrasing the questions. So with that rephrasing, what happens, right? I was able to remember when I go back to the passage and I was just skimming through that. I was able to remember it. Then I just noted down, and it was coming up. It was coming up sequentially. Then I used to, before reading the passage also, I used to guess the answers. So if this is the questions, what could be the answer?
Okay.
It cannot happen for all the 40 questions, because you generally know that. In some of the questions, it is straightforward, because these questions are all about your general day-to-day activities. Most of the questions you can guess, and with that, it was easy for me. So that's how I started practicing. And the toughest parts were, as obvious, it is true, false, not given sections, and then headings. Unfortunately, on the same exam day, as soon as I got the reading question paper, I thought, okay, I should not have got any true or false. But in the second section itself, there were 5 true or false. Then I thought, okay, I should not have got any headings. Third and fourth were completely headings.
Oh, no. Now, let me ask you something, though, about the headings, because candidates before have told me that they will save the headings questions for the end, because you can do all of the other questions first, and it sort of forces you to read through the text to a degree. I mean, not in any sort of real depth, but you have to skim through the text to find your answers. And then after you've done that, you kind of have a general understanding of what the passage is about. And that is a good state of mind to be in to tackle the headings question. Is this the sort of strategy that you followed?
No, Rian, I did not follow that, because I thought, okay, whatever is going to happen, let us go in a sequence.
Okay.
Let us, because I know the section 1 is going to be easy. I thought, okay, let us score all the marks in the section 1 and improve our confidence. Then we'll go to the next section. That's how I thought. Then I completed section 1 and section 2. These were very simple. And then when I moved on to section 3 and 4, there were complete headings. It took a lot of time. I have to agree that, because whenever I was practicing at my home, I used to complete these reading exams in 35 to 40 minutes max. But in the exams, I had a maximum of 5 minutes to review the questions and answers. These headings took a lot of time, because I got around 10 to 15 in headings itself. There was no way for me to skip any particular paragraphs or something. I was supposed to read each and every paragraph multiple times to understand, because third section, unfortunately, the questions were not coming in a sequential order for me. It was all in jumbled way. One question was done in the first paragraph, second paragraph, it was a quite different way. So I had to read all the sections very carefully.
I see.
And thanks to the extra 5 minutes or 10 minutes I had, because I still remember I erased some options, I erased some answers, and then reverted it. And after getting 9, I remember, okay, if I would not have had that 5 minutes of time, it would not have been possible.
Yeah, I guess so. So basically, you were right down to the last couple of minutes finishing your reading.
Yeah, I had some time, some 5 to 10 invaluable times.
Yeah, yeah.
With that, I was able to review the questions, and I was able to change the answers.
Now, I want to just jump back really quickly to something that you said. So you said in the practice leading up to this exam, you started your practice exam scoring 28 out of 40 questions correctly. Now, how did that progress as you got closer to the examination? Was it sort of a slow upward, movement towards getting a perfect band 9 in your practice exams, or
No,
was
no,
it no? Was it more of a
no,
quick?
no. What happened again is that when I said 28 out of 40, right, it was in academic section, not in general.
Right.
So I practiced around some 4 to 5 academic question papers.
Okay.
Okay. After then, I started practicing general. But I'm very sure I never crossed 38 in my practice exams. Only one time I had taken 38.
Okay.
Okay, and that was with a lot of concentration, and that too 38 came just a week before my examinations. Before that, it was not a. I usually used to score around some 34, 35. I used to get disappointed. 35 means in reading you will be getting around 7 or 7.5 only, not 8. For getting 8, you should score 38 out of 40. So it was a progress. It was not coming in a day or two. Like initially, I was making a lot of mistakes. The true false given, I was taking a lot of time to understand because I was going through a US site as well as IELTS Simon site, where they were clearly distinguishing between like how to go. Okay, how you should nail down that. Okay, this is a not given. Whenever earlier I was not understanding. Then I really understood the concept behind not given. You should not use your brain. You should not think by okay if this is the what okay. If I'm washing my clothes, I would have used soap. Don't think about that because I could have washed my clothes using soap powder also. So it was not using your logical sense. Just concentrate of what has been given in the text.
Right.
If the question asks and the statement is directly pertaining to that, then you can say true. Or if it is directly contradicting, then it is false or else not given straight away. Don't think too much on this not given questions. So that's what I learned from all these practices.
Okay. Now let's go to your writing. So you scored a band 7. You scored this on your first attempt at the IELTS, which is very, very good. It's even hard for native English speakers to score band 7 on the first time taking the IELTS. So tell us a bit about the preparation that you did. Tell us about the kind of question that you received in the exam and how you approached it.
Okay. Remember the questions because it's a very short while. I remember task 1 and task 2 as well. Task 1 question was very simple, and then it was my favorite question. It was about, okay, you had a dinner with your friend at his home. You write a letter thanking him about the dinner, and how did you feel about being with the parents at their home, and invite them to your house. So these were the questions in task 1. So thanks to you and Simon. Without them, I am repeatedly saying this. This is not exaggeration. And I'm very sure listeners like me would have understood this. I didn't go to any other site, only 2 sites, your site and Simon's site, and where they have given clear examples like how to write an informal letter, how to write a formal letter. Okay, that I followed, simple steps. I didn't follow any other steps. And I got to know how to start an informal letter. So that way I started this informal letter, writing a letter to a friend. Then I started explaining about the food, because that was the first part of the questions, and I used some being a great fan of food. I know like a lot of things about food. I used all the vocabulary whatever I had.
Great.
And then the second paragraph I was talking about their parents. How did they feel being with their parents? The third paragraph, and I was talking about the third point, inviting them for the dinner. And that's where I made mistakes, because after coming out from the exam hall, I realized that I have not written well when in the third paragraph. Okay, and this was about the task 1. And task 2 question was, let me remember. Yeah, it was about industrial pollution, and people believe that putting heavy taxes on these industries will curb these industrial pollutions. And the second part of the question was, if you have any other ways to control the pollution, discuss that too. Discuss both views and give your opinion.
You had a double question for your task 2. It was asking.
Exactly.
So you had to either agree or disagree with the statement, and secondly provide some sort of suggestion for a solution.
Yes. So it was easy for me because I followed that introduction, 2 paragraphs, and conclusion. And I used the second paragraph for saying, okay, this is also one of the best way to curb the pollution. And the third paragraph I used to say, okay, there are some additional ways to curb the pollutions in addition to imposing heavy taxes on these industries. Like, okay, we can say use the natural resources. So I had accumulated some ideas for that particular stuff, and I had written that in the third paragraph and concluded. But what I did, right, for this task 1 and task 2, I had taken some time. For example, task 1, I had taken around 5 minutes to plan, okay, how I'm going to write it, what are the words I will use it, and how I'm going to go in a sequence. The same way for task 2 also, I had taken around 10 minutes. Initially, I was scared by thinking, okay, I had taken much time for planning. But fortunately, I was having more than 15 minutes, I think so, after completing both task 1 and task 2. I was keep on reading my task 1 and task 2 multiple times.
You had 5 minutes to plan for task 1. Now, did you finish the letter within 15 minutes? So the entire thing was 20 minutes long?
Task 1, exactly 20 minutes. Maybe 17, 18 minutes.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay, so you still got through it quickly. And then for the task 2, so 10 minutes of planning and roughly 30 minutes of writing.
No, not even 30 minutes. It did not take
Sorry,
that
that's
time.
right, yeah, because you pointed out that you had some time at the end.
Yeah.
So how long did the task 2 take, would you say?
Task 2, after planning, I had taken around some 20 minutes for writing. Because, as you said, 250 words, because I was reading your IELTS Network site where you had posted some quiz by saying, okay, top 50 essays or the first 50 essays will be evaluated. So I was going through that also. Most of the people just written 250 and you have evaluated them very well. So I had in my mind that I'm not going to cross more than 250 or 260 words. After this time, right, when I had the time, when I counted, it was exactly coming around 260, 262 words. That's it.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think that some students, they're under the impression that the more that they write, the more they're going to impress the examiner. And I often think that actually what happens is it's counterproductive. Yeah, because they end up making silly grammatical mistakes, or they're rushing to try to write more when it's actually not even it's not needed. The exam. The only requirement is that you're above 250 words. If you write 250 words on the nose, you're not going to lose any marks. So it's just important that you fulfill the task, and that if that requires a little bit more, maybe 260, 270, maybe 300 words, then so be it. But as far as word count is concerned, I don't think students should be deluded at all. More words does not necessarily mean more marks.
Yeah, exactly. I just followed all your valuable advices by saying, okay, I just paraphrased the questions in introduction. I did not use much time. I just paraphrased that, and then paragraph 2 and 3, it was all about ideas and how I just sequentially arranged my ideas. And task the conclusion, again, it's a kind of rephrasing my thesis, what I had told in my introduction and my opinion. That's it.
So now, if we could nitpick a little bit, what do you think it was? I know it's kind of hard to say in hindsight, but what do you think it was that held you back from, say, a band 8?
Yeah. I know that very well, because once you come out, because it happens to most of the people, I think so, because as I explained, the question was very simple. They were talking about pollution and heavy taxes, okay? But unfortunately, what happened on that particular day, right? Once I sat and then saw these questions, I was not finding different vocabulary for pollution and tax. Okay, I was keep on thinking, okay, what shall I write? I have used the tax couple of times, 2 or 3 times. And I was thinking, okay, what are the other words I can use for tax, different vocabulary? But I did not find any. But once I stepped out of that examination room, I started thinking, okay, I could have used the levy, I could have used the excise duty. So many things were coming out. But unfortunately, on that particular time, it didn't turn up. So I think the first point was that vocabulary, the wide range of vocabulary was not there. And I think I have used a couple of linking words, but not to the greatest extent. I could have used it better. So these are the main things I feel. The grammatical mistakes was not there, that I am very sure. And the spelling mistake also, whenever, for example, and I just forgot what was the spelling of negligence. Then I just write out the word and made, okay, carelessness. That's it, because I made it simple. Let's not write a word with a spelling mistake and lose mark, and I'll use some other word which I know it perfectly. Right. And grammatical mistake was not there. Wide range of vocabulary and then linking. Those are the main things I feel which would have brought down my score 7.
Okay, let's proceed to the speaking section of the examination. Now, tell us a bit about your experience speaking in English.
Okay, speaking in English, as I said, I'm coming from India, and India, you can see, like, we have been reading English right from our childhood.
Sure, yeah.
But unfortunately, what happens, right? We have been reading and writing, but we never get a chance to speak them. That's the reality. Because I'm not telling about all the people in India. There are a lot of people who are great speakers of English in India. But unfortunately, we are not. Because I come from a remote village in India. And, I studied in English, but we did not get a chance to converse with people. Even after my college, even during my college also, we never used to speak in English. We write exams in English, we read that, but never used to speak. But that's my strongest advice. If you want to score high in speaking, you need to practice well. You need to start speaking in English a lot. And unfortunately, I did not practice that much for the speaking test. I did not have time for that. I was concentrating on this listening, reading, and writing. I did not do anything for speaking. I thought, okay, it's a day-to-day activity. I will be able to manage it. But unfortunately, I was not able to score as I expected. But it was because of my lack of preparation, nothing else.
And did you do any speaking training at all, even a little bit, or was it just completely
No,
lacking in your preparation?
honestly, I have done a little bit in the sense because now I am staying with my friend in my house, in a house. Okay, and both of our boys have gone for the delivery, so we are using this time to prepare. Okay, so whenever we cook, okay, that's the only time when we are free. So whenever we are cooking, we used to converse in English. So that's it. That's the only English speaking preparation we had. Nothing else.
I see. So now let's talk about the examination. And I hope if that was the preparation that you were doing, that you received some questions on the exam that had to do with food.
Yeah, exactly. So when I saw the task one, I was quite excited. I got excited. Okay, it's not going to be a tough task for me. Because I was thinking, okay, if it would have been some... Because other advice, it's not an advice. I will just share it as an experience. Whenever it comes a real thing, right, whatever has happened in your life, then I feel you will feel very confident, and it comes either it is a writing or speaking. It becomes a very natural. You will be more. You can just speak or write very well. Whereas if you are making up the things, unfortunately, in some situations you have to make it up when you have not encountered the situation. But I feel if it has really happened in your life, then it becomes really easy for you to speak or as well as write.
So let's talk about then the experience that you had in the examination room. Can you walk us through from the moment that you walk into the room with the examiner right to the very end of the exam?
Yeah, sure. So my speaking happened sometime on the 4 o'clock in the evening, and I think he is a British examiner, and he was a so friendly and amicable person. He came to me and he came to the door, and then he received me, and then he offered me a seat, and so he was so friendly, and he was but unfortunately he was looking tired.
Okay.
Maybe because of the time, the 4 o'clock.
Right.
I think he would have had a lot of interviews back to back.
Okay.
But he was not showing up that. I was able to see from his face, but he was so friendly, and he was greeting me, and he started recording. And the moment he started, it was general questions by asking, okay, whether you are a student or you're working. Then I said, okay, I am working. And that's where I started well. I really started well because those were real general questions. I told him, okay, how I got recruited into this particular company, and how long I have been with this company. Because I read from the advisors, you should not answer in a single word questions, single word answers. You need to just speak as much as possible.
Well, actually, I'll just jump in here. The average answer in the speaking section of the exam is 22 seconds. And that doesn't mean that every answer has to be 22 seconds, but you can imagine that some responses might be 10 seconds and some responses might be as long as 40 seconds.
Yeah, exactly. So the best part about my examiner, right, he never interrupted me. Because I was keep on explaining for a longer time. He was so kind, he never interrupted me. He just let me talk for how much ever time I wanted. I think that it did not happen for 10-15 minutes. I hope it would have crossed more than 15-20 minutes. We were talking. He interrupted me during the Q2 card, that Q card only. During that exact 2 minutes, right? That's the only time he interrupted me. Other times he never interrupted. He was just letting me talk for a while.
Well, and perhaps he was also looking to see how you would round the answer out and how you would bring it to a conclusion and then pass the conversation back over to him.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. Now tell us about the first part of the examination. What sort of questions were you asked?
Okay. The first part of the question, as I said, he was asking whether you are a student or working. I explained him whatever the stuff. Then he was asking about, whether you are interested in these parties. I said I'm not interested in going to parties. He was asking. Then I told the reasons why I'm not interested in parties. Then he asked me, okay, what you do if you don't go to parties? Then I explained him, okay, we were around some 10 to 15 people staying together. We used to go for a long ride in a bike. We used to get up early in the morning, go for a long ride in the bike, the early morning. So I was explaining that. Those were the questions. And other questions in the general first part. Sorry, Rian, I don't remember apart from this one. Okay. It was all general questions in the first section. These were the questions I remember. Okay, then one more question he asked. When I was telling about these parties, right, he asked, okay, whether you would like to go with your parents or with your friends, with whom you would feel more comfortable. I said, okay, obviously with my friends, I will be feeling more comfortable because I can do whatever I think. With my parents, I feel restricted. I will not be express myself. Okay. So I was explaining that all in a lengthy way.
What was the cue card, and did this relate in any way to his question about parties?
No, it was not about the parties. It was a dry subject altogether. Okay. It was about, okay, the cue card was saying, okay, what is your favorite weather? When is it? How it will be in your country? And why do you like it? So these were the questions. So I was talking about the weather of summer. Because really that's a predominant season in India, and especially in my hometown. We always have these summers. Very few. We don't have winter seasons. We have these rainfalls, but predominantly it will be summer seasons. Then I said I do like. I am in favor of this summer season, and I told him, okay, during summer times we get a lot of summer holidays. We visit our friends. We go to our relatives' house. We play cricket for long hours. And we come back home. So and we do a lot of trekking. So I was explaining a lot of things about this weather and what I used to do and why do I like it. And I said these are the reasons why do I prefer the summer season compared to the other seasons. And I think I crossed the 2 minutes. Then he said it's time up for that particular section.
Okay. And so now, if you talk about the response itself, you obviously were sharing examples because you were talking about summer in India. How are you linking the ideas together?
Okay, so what I just made sure in my mind is I have to give a lot of examples so that with that I can use the linking words naturally, because what happens to me at least, right, whenever I think for a lot of complex vocabulary or like if I intentionally think I need to use these linking words, right, the connection between my brain and then my mind stops, okay, and I will not be able to flow in a natural. So I thought let us be natural. So just a minimum thing what I should do is give a lot of examples. With that examples, your cohesiveness also will get improved. So that's how I just that's how I performed in this interview. Most places, how much ever example I was able to quote, I quoted that examples.
Let's continue then and talk about part 3. And typically the cue card sort of leads into some sort of conversation in part 3. So were the first couple of questions about weather?
Yeah, exactly. Because he was asking about, okay, when you said summer is your favorite weather, and what are the disadvantages of being in a dry, humid conditions? I told him, okay, maybe you will get some skin allergy, and your stamina will be lost out if you travel more in these summer conditions. But I quoted other example by saying, okay, I was in Atlanta for some time in US for a year or so. But I told, okay, maybe people like Western people may not feel comfortable as the Indians are feeling in the summer seasons. In the same way, I did not feel comfortable when I went to Atlanta for the whole 1 year. I used to wear the clothes and then all my sweaters and all the time around. But I really feel summer is the best season for us. Then he was asking about other questions related to weather only. What are all the other weather conditions you do have in India? And a couple of questions on that. Then he moved on to asking, okay, how do you feel this weathers and this environment is getting affected because of these pollutions? And somehow I feel it was directly relating to my task 2 question. So
yeah, that is. I was just going to point that out too. That it sounds like there was almost a connection.
So,
there,
yeah. So he was asking about how do people react to these pollutions in India? What are all the effects we are taking? And he was asking me suggest some solutions, what we can do it. Then that time I used examples of Singapore, because in Singapore we do have a lot of great examples where they control these public private vehicles. They control the number of cars and then motorbikes, and they motivate people using the public transport. I quoted that example by saying, okay, in Singapore we do have these ones. With this, that lot of pollutions has been controlled. The same way in India also we could control this private vehicles and start motivating people and giving incentive to people to use public transports. So that's how I correlated. I correlated between Singapore and India and suggested these are the solutions and said, okay, we can use a lot of or say like environment friendly resources rather than relying on petrol and other places. We can go for bioelectric, hydroelectric, so and so. What are all the technical things that came up in my mind during that time? I just told him.
So in the part 3, now you mentioned that the examiner was very welcoming to you, elaborating with your answers and talking at length. How long were you talking for roughly for each of the part 3 questions?
No, I think if you see exactly for around 70 to 80% of the questions, I think I could have crossed more than 30 seconds on an average. I think I would have spoken for 30 seconds. Because I'll tell you the reason. Because I was sitting for my turn, and there was just board for that speaking tips. They were said, okay, speak as much as you can for the speaking test. Then I took that. Okay, let us speak how much ever we can. Let's see what happens there.
Yeah. Okay, now we're coming to the end of the interview, Noor, and I am curious. What advice would you give to somebody who's hoping to get Band 7?
No, 7, I think rather than testing yourself every time practicing your exams, right? Rather than that, prepare more. Prepare like listen to a lot of news and then read a lot of newspapers and take out whenever you find new words, just note it down. And then it's simple, like you listen to the same steps again and again. I transcripted, it may be useful for some people and may not be useful for some people, but you can try it out, whether it is really helpful or not. Because in my case, it really worked. Before transcripting, I was not scoring much in listening. After transcripting and using some small tactics by saying, okay, rephrasing the questions, I was able to score more. And I'm just sharing my experience. Because I remember somebody called Prashant or somebody from your podcast.
Yes,
right? He was sharing some experience. Those were really... I'm not sure whether I really used or not, but it boosted my confidence because he was talking in a way and he was sharing his experience. I remember there are a lot of other, one person from Russia or Moscow. He too was, I think he is a student. Maybe on the first attempt or second attempt, he scored so exciting scores. And I just listened to all of the podcast. Why I'm repeatedly telling this is, this helps you in a lot of ways. You will be coming to know a lot of new words. At the same time, you can also feel confident that you can also do it. That's it. Like when I have done it, right? Each and everybody, I think everybody is having their own English skills. It's only about mastering your exam skills. Once you start doing it and practicing it, I'm very sure everybody will be able to achieve their targets.
Very, very good advice. And just before we go, I just want to highlight your point about transcribing, because that I think really is a very, very good strategy. You listen, you as you're listening, you take down what you're hearing and areas that you're not sure of. You go home, you check your dictionary. I think, Noor, that the strategies that you follow really were what accelerated your progression and allowed you to score such a high mark on the exam.
Yes, Rian, exactly.
Noor, thank you very much for sharing this information today. I know it's going to be invaluable to the students that are listening.
I will be really happy if it's been useful for any one of the persons, because I got experience from your podcast. In the same way, I will be really happy if somebody gets benefited with this.
Thank you for downloading from IELTS.com. Have you achieved an overall band of 7 or higher on the IELTS exam? Why not contribute to the podcast? Contact Ryan at his blog, IELTS.com.